corrected favor. Jackson Snyder Presents is back.
As a favor to me, I wonder if you would smoosh that roach right over there looking at you.
No problem. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Hearing Voices. And tonight we've got Jesse Snyder, as I had promised. Good to see a few on here. I'm expecting maybe 8 or 10 people before we're all done. But Jesse's had a very varied life, and a very varied life. That's good. For his age, an awful lot of experiences here and there, some that we have never dreamed that we would have. And he's going to tell us about some of them. I'm just going to let him tell.
Well, we're going to try, right?
Yeah. This is my nephew. We never get to see each other. When's the last time we saw each other? In about 2005?
That sounds about right. It was in Florida.
No, we saw each other at Exma.
Really? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, but that was in Florida.
Yeah, that was in Florida. So it's really good to see you and be able to talk to you and to follow your career, or I should say careers all this time, starting in China, growing up in China public schools. That's one area that I would like to hear more about sometime.
We can start on that if you like.
All right, why not? Let's do it.
Why not? Yeah, sure. Like, we just now we had a chance to catch up for about 20, 30 minutes. And that was like, I lost you here. Are you on?
I'm there. Yes.
Okay. Boy, great picture. So, it's not really something that many people ask me about, I think, because it's difficult to relate to.
And was this a cigarette factory school?
That's right. The cigarette factory school in Yuxi, China. Yuxi is Chinese for Jade Stream. So when we first moved there in, it was when I was 6 months old, so 1987. And there were no cars. Well, I should say there was one small truck that was owned by the government. No one ever saw it, so it was sort of like a bit like Yeti. There was all horse-drawn carts, and my sister and I would have to walk miles to school in the morning. It was very different, but things that peak in the memory are sort of the smell of roasting tobacco in the morning and, horse manure as you're trudging your way to school.
Were you like a foreign devil?
Yeah, that's actually, that's what they call them, foreign devils. Could I get your video feedback? I like seeing your face.
Oh, sure. That is my face.
Yeah, but it's freeze framed and you're wearing some kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm into steampunk right now.
Oh,
I wanted to see your goggles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can come around to that.
Okay.
Someone asked me.
Tell us about the school.
So it's a very, very, very different. You can't possibly imagine how different it is, though, maybe there's someone Chinese listening in. I'm not trying to, badmouth the Chinese system or anything
Let him
like
have
that.
It. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I was telling my wife the other day, it's brutal over there. They kind of subscribe to this heavy honor type system. And I remember, though, our teachers, they were too afraid to beat my sister and I because they didn't want to cause an international incident. But my classmates really got it double barreled. And
were there any more Caucasians in the school?
They'd actually never seen Caucasians before we arrived.
I suppose that you really got a lot of attention.
Yeah, and different forms of attention. My teachers were like strangely obsessed with me. I remember my principal pulling me out of class and then bringing me to her office and just setting me down at her desk, and there's all these fruits and cakes lined up around me, and she just wanted me to sit there and eat fruit, and so that she could watch me. Yeah, pretty weird.
Wow.
And then this was a very backwards people group at the time. My classmates had never seen blonde hair before, and they thought that it was made of pure gold. So they would come up behind me and pluck my hair out from my head and put it in their notebooks, thinking that it would bring them good luck or something.
Did you get to recite all kinds of communist mottos?
Oh, yeah. This is a morning thing. So you show up for school, and the whole school stands outside, and they have the loudspeakers. Actually, you see this that old antique speaker horn in the background here, something like that. You know,
Horn.
yeah, that's right. Set up on big pyres, and they would have the morning exercise music blasting. Everyone's lined up in grids, doing the morning exercises, and then you go into your class, and then everyone recites the communist slogan.
Do you remember what it was?
Not well enough to recite it right now.
Okay. So
But go ahead.
You didn't get beaten.
Yeah, I got thumped. I got thumped on the head a few times. That's about the extent of it. But my classmates really did get it. I remember one time, I was sitting in class, and it had been one of my friend's birthday, and his parents bought him a little pencil sharpener for his birthday. It was like this, one of those green, like clear pencil sharpeners shaped like an elephant or something. And he was obsessed with this thing. This was the nicest thing that he's ever got in his life. And he's sitting there, and he just couldn't help but stare at it. And the teacher noticed him, and she started yelling at him, and she made the whole class chant to get him to throw it on the ground and step on it, step on it, step on it. And so he stepped on it and crushed this little pencil sharpener. And then the teacher came over and just started wailing on him until, he's bleeding out of his nose, and he's just laying on the ground, and his pencil sharpener is crushed everywhere. And it was, man, that was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. That just stuck in there.
Amazing.
Terrible.
Amazing. Was this a school primarily for employees that made cigarette? I understand everybody smokes in China.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And actually, this the brand of cigarettes is the Hongtashan, so which means Red Pagoda Mountain, and the village was actually built around this little mountain with a red pagoda on it, and they had some sort of legend that there was dragon living in it, and that's the most famous brand of Chinese cigarettes. That you can buy them here, actually. Hongtashan
Makes me want one right now.
Yeah,
What about the language?
It's Mandarin.
Did you have language lessons before you went in to understand anything? But you started school, right?
Yeah, so
did you speak in the home.
Right. It was a bit of an issue because, when we moved there, I was 6 months old. So I really learned how to speak Chinese pretty much before English because all my friends were Chinese. So that's what I was using the most. And then our parents had to bring someone over to tutor us in English so that they could communicate with us, because we would come up to them and be like, how do you say this in English? Give them a Chinese word, and then I don't know. Because as you know, older people have a little bit more of a hard time learning a new language than someone growing up speaking it. So, talking about neuroplasticity again.
Neuroplasticity. That is really poor. If you're
Absolutely.
Growing up in a culture that's completely different than yours, and you go to school and they don't speak your native language, and then you learn their native language better than you know your own. So how's your Chinese now?
It's still pretty good. Actually, I was at went over to a Chinese foot massage place to get my mom a little gift card for Christmas, and I just walked in speaking Chinese, and their jaws hit the floor. And hey, come over here!
Can you really impress waitresses in Chinese restaurants?
Oh yeah. They always it always gets a good reaction out of them. It's the last thing they're expecting to see some blonde guy, just in America, being able to speak like one of their own people.
What does this mean in Chinese? You want the link? You want the link? I didn't know one Chinese word. It's hung chow. It means constipation.
Oh man,
that's the best I can do.
They have no qualms about talking about bowel movements over there. It'll be, if you meet someone over there, it could literally be the second sentence they ask you, do you have diarrhea? And
I found that out in the Philippines. It's the same way. They have no problem with those kinds of things at all. I mean, I've had strangers over there in the time I was there just come up and ask me like that.
No shame.
Do you poop like a goat? That was one thing I heard. Well, anyway, let's go on from there.
What happened next? Let's see. We lived in Israel. We lived in Jerusalem. My sister and I went to high school in Jerusalem. We actually did get to attend an immersion school there. It ended up being it's this school called Ulpan. Mm-hmm. And though my
LPAN, yeah, it's a very well-known company.
Is it?
Yes.
It ended up up being all Russian immigrants, and then my sister and I. So I got to learn how to understand a little bit of Russian. And yeah, that was an interesting time. We lived in Israel for about 2 years.
And you went to school where they spoke Hebrew?
Yeah, so after Ulpan, we went to this place called Beit Chinuch, and that's just what's called, it means house of knowledge, and it was just an Israeli public school.
How did you do with the language there? This is fascinating to me.
It was that was difficult. So learning Hebrew is already a challenge enough, but then you get 4 months in Ulpan, and then they just slap you in Israeli public school, and you have to learn Arabic in Hebrew. And that for me was like it's like just a fractal of impossibility, and I was just swimming in confusion.
So in the public school there, you're talking about both Israeli nationals and Israeli nationals that were Arabic of descent or Muslim at the same school?
Well, no, it was mostly Russian, actually. Most people were Russian. I had a lot of Dutch friends too. Dutch, Russian, Kurds. Well, that's pretty much it.
These were primarily Jews that came back at one time or the other?
I don't know if this was a return type of a thing, but they make aliyah, Mm-hmm. They're coming to, I guess that is the concept of returning, even if you never stepped foot in Israel your entire life. When you go to Israel and become a citizen, you are returning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in that case, you've got to be an Orthodox Jew in order to do that. So we're talking about kind of a regathering there of sorts. So it really is a little bit like the book of Ezekiel that talks about mass return. And now you're getting maybe the second or third generation of those people. Mm. But you're talking about people that don't know Hebrew. And I'm interested in, you've got a lot of Russian immigrants. How about African immigrants? You want any of them?
Not a lot. I mean, maybe a couple. I remember seeing this poster that kind of made me chuckle. It was Haitians talking about, becoming Israeli citizens. And so I didn't see. It would be bizarre. It's like the last thing that you would expect. But, I mean, we all come from the same seed, right?
I guess so.
Do we?
Just like anything else. Who knows? For sure.
That's right. That's right.
For sure.
Forgotten history.
Go on. And if you've got a question for him in this little dissertation, just break in.
I don't see any faces on here, but it looks like we got a few other people hanging out with us.
10 people on here. That's about what we wanted.
Good.
Thank you.
So what happened next? Oh, yeah. Thank you. I can't see any faces, but welcome. One of the things that you and I have in common is music.
So, yes, I called you for some advice years and years ago, and you were working on a program called Fruity Loop.
That's right. And then it became FL Studio after that.
Yeah. So I was pretty amazed that at your age you were into doing that, because it doesn't seem like anybody in our family else got really into the music, but you and I.
Not in the production side of it, anyway. Yeah, we're the only ones.
French horn or something, but
yeah, right.
Production, and here you're doing it at an early age. When did you start that?
Actually, I started it when we moved to Israel. So I discovered that, like you said, Fruity Loops, and it was such an intuitive software. And I had been playing piano since I was 5, and then picked up guitar and bass, and was always interested in MIDI. But this software just kind of brought it all together and made it all make sense. And I started tracking mostly electronic music. And from there, produced maybe 7 albums of electronic music. And I had been playing guitar fairly seriously. And we went back to China after Israel, and I finished off high school there. And I had been listening to this guitar player. His name is Tommy Emmanuel. Have you ever heard of him?
Through you.
Yeah, he's like the godfather of acoustic guitar. He is the guitar player's guitar player. And he's sort of like the wizard of steel string guitar. And this guy cut his teeth with Chet Atkins. Actually, Chet Atkins recorded his final album before he left us with Tommy Emmanuel. This album's called The Day the Fingerpickers Took Over the World. And they do that, Merle Travis thumb pick kind of style where they make it sound like it's 3 guitar players at once, but it's just one person.
I understand that you want some kind of an interview or tryout.
Oh, well, sort of. So I'd been playing his music for a few years, and I was in college, and then I went to college here in Phoenix, Arizona, at Grand Canyon University, and I had been just playing more than I should have, playing, at the peril of my studies. Yeah. And I decided that I had to go and meet this Tommy Emmanuel guy, so I hopped on a plane and flew out to Kentucky. And I went to one of his guitar workshops, and, it's like a 3-4 day long event, and all these great players, John Jorgensen, John Knowles, Frank Vignola, Tommy Emmanuel, of course, was the headliner. And then at the end of this workshop, we're all sitting in this huge circle, and Tommy goes, "Is there anyone that would like to play something with me or for me?" And everyone just falls silent because, nobody wants to play for this guy that just blew your head apart, with his guitar licks. And I was like, well, hell, I'll do it. So I got my guitar, and, I went up and played him a tune that I had written from my first solo guitar album. And he seemed to enjoy it enough, and after the show, his manager approached me and invited me on tour with him. So I went on tour with Tommy for about 2 years.
Can I play one of your songs here?
Sure. What do you have?
Well, I put together several from, what do you got, 3 albums?
3 vocal albums,
Three vocal albums, yes.
From when I was in Nashville.
50 minutes of it from your albums that I had, and I did a show on this back in 2016. And so I have, these are dated. But let me run off one.
Sure.
I need to share screen, share my computer.
So these, doesn't matter what you're playing from, all of these albums were produced in Nashville, Tennessee. After I, played with Tommy at his workshop, he invited me to move out to Nashville, and that I toured from there with him for 2 years. And then from that time, I actually started touring with my own music and doing my own shows. Actually, Tommy's live sound engineer, Brad Binge, I was just telling you about him earlier. He and I produced these albums. So all the songs are written by me, and I played most of the instruments on them, depending on what you're going to play here. Looks like
I don't know what. Yeah, I mean, that's the name of the MP3, but I don't know what's going to come up here. Let's see. Let's start over again. Okay. Weird song.
With a rainbow in my cloudy day, my darkest blues have gone away. You make me thank the Lord for everything, and every hour is like the first of spring. You're my shooting star, don't shoot too far from me. Don't shoot too far from me.
Yeah, that's Steve Patrick on the trumpet, man.
Jackson Snyder Presents is sponsored by Vero Esenia Hod.
Let me get to another one. There's some on that first side that I really...
Boy, that was one of the greatest sessions. Steve Patrick plays trumpet for Matchbox 20, and he plays on Paul Simon's records as well.
I told her, shot shot over my life.
I'm sorry.
I loved her right. I gave her my life, but she loved you instead, so I shot you dead. I told her you left on the train and she wept. Then she waited for you. She waited for you. And she waited for you like a virgin mother for a son. But she never loved me, so I didn't win. I guess she discovered my gun. Oh, brother, what have I done? Oh, brother, what have I done? Her black satin dress on the
Oh, what happened?
day I confessed. Now she'll never give me the key to my dream, but she gave it to you like a surgeon gives life to the weak. She never loved me, and now never will. I guess you were always the one. Oh, brother, what have I done? Oh, brother, what have I done?
I wonder if the one I'm thinking is on next year. Might be my favorite.
Which one?
That one.
Oh man. Hey, that's actually a Tom Waits song. All my voice except the bass.
Pocket and a top hat on your head, a hot meal on your table, and a blanket on your bed. Today's gray skies, tomorrow's tears. We'll have to wait till yesterday is here. Well, I'm going to New York City, and I'm leaving on a train. And if you want to stay behind, wait till I come back again. Today's gray skies, tomorrow's tears. We'll have to wait till yesterday is here. And if you wanna go where rainbows end, we'll have to say goodbye. For our dreams come true just up ahead, and it's how your memories lie. Now the road lays out before me, and the moon is shining bright, and I want you to remember as I disappear tonight.
Shroomkov, you lost the audio here.
No, he just disappeared tonight.
Jackson Snyder Presents is sponsored by Vero Yahad, a biblical literature think tank headquartered in Vero Beach, Florida. Vero Yahad provides new translations, online seminars, rare books and research work connected with the Zadokite movement, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the New Testament. Free lectures, lecture recordings, and literature are posted at www.veroyahad.org. That's VEROYAHAD.org. Contact me, your host, Jackson Snyder, by email at veroyahad@gmail.com or catch us all on Facebook.
Well, when I first heard this stuff, I thought this guy's stolen my style and my song.
It's all in the family.
It just blew my mind. I thought,
it's all in the
those
family.
are my songs. I mean, they're so similar. Of course, I didn't get the play you did, but the style, chord changes, the solos, backgrounds, and vocal, very similar. I like it.
It's
I like it.
a little difficult for me to listen to it, to be honest with you.
Of course it is. You went and broke my heart when you went into bodybuilding. I thought he's going to go running around in his underwear when he ought to be in the studio.
Well,
okay?
I mean,
so
yeah.
Let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I toured in Nashville and did this thing, recording my own music for about 6 years, just under 6 years. And like I was telling you earlier, it feels a little bit like I've lived several different lives. They've all been very partitioned and separate, one life having nothing to do with the next. But in this one, man, ended rather abruptly and painfully. The love of my life at the time decided that she wanted nothing to do with me, and I was wrought over it. And I couldn't play. I couldn't sing. Even just still thinking about it, it's difficult.
These are all like broken down cowboy songs in a way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Sad me. I don't have any time. You take all my time. One's about, I didn't play. It's about the morals.
Oh, Moral Compass.
That is something else.
So this was before. I mean, that was in my heyday of touring, and when I was happy at the time. I'm happy again, but yeah. So when everything fell apart. And I had a full studio's worth of gear because I was also producing for many different artists and playing as a hired gun for a bunch of different artists. Country tour, jazz tour, rock tour, you name it, I did all of it. And after, the crap hit the fan, I just wanted to leave. So I took everything that I owned that I could fit in my 4Runner. I loaded it down to the gills, and I put everything else in a storage shed and just took the key and gave it to the owner and proprietor of the storage facility and said, whatever's in there, you can have it. Be gentle. And I left. And bodybuilding was always an important thing to me. I've always been doing it. But it kept me alive at the time. I think it kept me from killing myself, to be honest with you, not to get too dark. And I traveled across the country, going to different gyms, just taking my frustration out. And when I found my way back here to Phoenix, I left my car here. I went back to China where my parents were still there. And then I ended up again back here in Phoenix, and that just happened to be what I had. So whatever I have is what I go, all the way. I'm always all in whatever I do. So I took bodybuilding and I opened my own gym here, and I started competing in men's physique. So fortunately, I didn't have to, sport a G-string like you're saying. It's all, regular swim trunks, like knee-length swim trunks, like, a beach body type thing. I took it further than, I thought that I wanted to. Originally, my goal was to take first place in unregulated show as a natural competitor. So being someone who's never used any form of steroid my whole life, I wanted to take first place in an unregulated show where I knew that they were using steroids. And not only did I end up finally at the end of this whole thing taking first place at the big show of the year here, I actually took the overall title. But you know what? Like at the end of it, and I knew this was going to happen, at the end when I'm up there in front of thousands of people, they give you this huge fake ass plastic trophy and you're looking at it. And it's just, well, I mean, what's real? I look at this thing and it did not feel satisfying to me at all. But what did feel satisfying is, the people that I've helped along the way to, live a healthier lifestyle. And I still have my gym here, actually. I run my gym, make diets for people. That is meaningful, but a self-exaltation thing, and in that sense, it just didn't carry enough weight for me, but I've still been, producing music here and there for other people. And I think I'm getting back to the point where I'm able to play and not break down when I play a single chord on the guitar. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. I know exactly what you mean. But what's astonishing is that through this frustration, you came to the top, especially with these ones that may have been taking steroids. If you hadn't been taking any of them, how did you do that? That's just a supernatural thing.
Right. The pure force of will, and also massive overtraining, but then also 100% scientific approach to my dieting. So whenever I went into prep for, first of all, I did a full year of putting on mass, and that was, one of the most physically demanding things I've ever done, just ruining my nervous system by, squatting over 400 pounds for 10 reps, and just like the one side of the body would just have no sensation in it. And, and then when I came into the actual diet prep for, coming down to drop weight for the show, dropping a ridiculous amount of weight and, getting down to 3% body fat from going basically for a 9-month diet prep without any cheat meals and being in a caloric deficit for almost a whole year is not recommended. You can kill yourself doing that.
Yeah, certainly.
And that's why people are using steroids to do this, because it's not something that you can expect to do as a normal human being without them. But it's not impossible. It's just extremely demanding.
Oh, I see that picture that I published came out of a newspaper in California someplace. I've got it on Facebook. I noticed you've never been a big kid anyway. I noticed that your waistline must be 25 inches.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's a tiny waistline and the rest extremely muscled. I thought to be at this place, you must be suffering something terrible.
You're dying. Mm-hmm. But, I did notice something very interesting, and in the multiple preps that I've done, and more research needs to be done into this, but I noticed as I'm measuring my body fat, as I'm coming down, there's a certain point that you hit, and for me, it was between 8 and 6% body fat. When I hit that zone right there, I was at the peak of mental capacity. Suddenly, I felt like I had more memory retention. I was able to think things through much more clearly. I had more energy. I was doing projects left and right, and my mathematics skills were through the roof. But then when you drop below that 5% range, you're dying, because your body doesn't have enough internal fat storages, and you're just eating yourself, and then that from 5 to 3% just was hell.
So you took a year at that from 5 to 3%?
Well,
what did you eat?
It's not really about what you eat. It's about being in a deficit. So a lot of people ask me, what kind of foods do you need to eat to be, shredded or lean? And my answer is whatever foods you want to eat, but you have to be in a deficit, and you have to be getting enough protein. That's right. Yeah. Caloric deficit. So intaking less calories than your body burns each day.
So if Sherry wanted to be a bodybuilder, Sherry knows your dad pretty well, what would she have to do to get started on a regimen like that?
Well, it depends on what kind of a bodybuilder she wants to be. What's the goal look? There is no cookie cutter framework that you can apply to everyone. You have to look at the situation, and much like, science predicts how a system will evolve, you have to have complete knowledge of the present circumstance and then where you want to end up.
This is an intellectual pursuit as
anything
well as
can be.
Yeah, for sure. If you're talking about a science-based caloric deficit in order to build muscle mass, it sounds like a pretty deep subject to me.
It is, and that is the key. If you want to do it naturally, or you want to, even if you're not trying to compete, but you want to achieve something drastic with your physique naturally, you do it scientifically, and then you're basically taking the shortest distance between 2 points. Mm-hmm. You're taking a straight line, and you're not messing around with, all the pseudoscience of, the dogma diets that, man, that's just, the world is inundated with dogmatic diets right now.
Sure it is.
And nobody takes the time to research.
Is this more desire to win or angst over loss? You went into that to some degree there a minute ago.
Yeah, so it was a little bit half and half. I mean, at first, it was just pouring the frustration into. I remember doing this kind of mental exercise whenever I was actually in the gym. I would not try to ignore all of the problems that I was having or ignore, the things that were getting me down. I would take all of them and form a visual nexus, like just ball them up in front of me and then just do something insane in the gym and watch it physically fizzle away in front of me. And for that moment, it was okay. I guess that's why a lot of people resort to drugs. But I mean, really, it is a drug, but what isn't a drug? The human body is basically a bag of drugs. Endogenous effect of heavy lifting is very much a drug.
I imagine that the enkephalins were really flowing, the endorphins. Kind of a state.
Oh yeah,
it might have been in an hallucinatory state for quite some time.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So where are you going from here? We're going to have you back to talk about nuclear physics and some other things, but what's your plan now? We've got about 10 minutes left, and we want to leave a little time for questions if there are any.
Sounds good. Yeah, like I said to you earlier, I'm pretty heavy into a technical, a new life, if you were to say, the one that followed this one. Up here, I designed custom circuitry, and I'm building prototyping devices for order, basically.
Would you mind showing some of your inventions again, like you did to me?
Sure.
That was impressive.
Essentially what I have up here is just a prototyping lab. So everything that I build, all the chassis are printed on my 3D printer. Let's see, what do I have? Let me go over here.
You built those chassis on a 3D printer?
Sure. Let me show you something here that I have back here. All right, so these basically liquid crystal light valve glasses. This is an oscillator prototype. So when you flip this thing on, it has a variable tint level. So I don't know if you could see that, but
yes.
Okay. So this, you can basically you turn the oscillator on, and we get a variable speed flicker, which probably will show up weird because of the refresh rate. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Okay. So what happens with these is, let's say you're looking at something that's moving faster than persistence of vision allows you to see, for example, a very fast fan blade that appears just as a solid disc in front of your eyes. If you tune the oscillator to the resonant frequency or the speed oscillatory frequency of that fan, it will appear as frozen in time before your eyes. So this can be used as a diagnosis for engine issues, or you could just use it to look at a hummingbird frozen in time in your backyard. Or and I've actually noticed some strange hallucinatory effects from this device. If you just sit there and tune it to a certain frequency, you'll start seeing some weird things.
Well, I imagine that it's not like a snapshot of a moving object. You talked about that fan, that it's a stop action. It's not like a photographic stop action, is it? Right.
So in a sense, it's allowing you to select a frame rate for your natural viewing. So what happens? Yeah. So it is like a stop action, but only it's oscillating a stop action. Mm-hmm. So as the fan passes a certain point and this it allows the light through, if you hit the right frequency on the oscillator, you're going to see that same blade at the same point every time it comes around.
Oh,
So does that make
okay.
sense?
Yes, it does.
I've worked on a lot of acoustic devices as well. One of my personal developments over here is a device that I call Metatron's Hand, and it's a little contact amplifier. So if you press it up against a wall, it microphonizes that wall. So you're basically picking up the sound on the other side of the wall. And I'm sure that most people that have purchased this one from me are using it to listen to their significant others or nefarious purposes.
Yeah.
But it's a don't ask, don't tell type of a situation.
Well, I can certainly think of some things that would be productive and reasonable that it could be used for.
Absolutely. I mean, there are many
a
applications.
parent or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I have a few other concepts that works for. This one right here is I was just showing you. This is the mosquito.
That's really something.
It performs something called the voice of God, which you said that you've heard of. Mm-hmm. Basically, it collimates sound. So let's say you're standing in a crowd of people. I can beam an input audio directly to you, and no one else will hear it except for you. And you'll probably think that you're going crazy, but it's just collimated ultrasound gating.
And that's why they call it the voice of God, because I guess you hear it very clearly in a crowd or whatever, but nobody else around can.
Supposedly,
like shooting sound somebody.
Yeah, that's right. The legend has it that that government uses this tool, in places like the Middle East, where they can put funny ideas into someone's head while they're thinking that God is speaking directly to them. Who knows if that's true or not, but that's what they say. I really just wanted to build this one to see if it were possible, and it is possible. It works quite well, but this one, though I've had requests for purchase on this one, I'm a little bit too nervous to sell this one.
Why do you call it Metatron?
Metatron's Hand. So the actual transducer array is based on the geometry of Metatron's cube.
Oh, you're not talking about the Metatron of 3rd Maccabees or 3rd Enoch. You're talking about a device.
Yes and no, but I mean, if how anything about sacred geometry?
A little bit.
It's based on sacred geometry. So supposedly, Archangel Metatron was, if you subscribe to this way of thinking, in charge of geometry. Mm-hmm. And Metatron's cube is an informational system from which many things emerge, including atomic systems, electron orbitals, molecular bonds. This is a study that you could dive pretty deep into, but it turns out that it's a pretty efficient configuration for this contact transducer array. So
I think you're speaking Chinese right now.
No, I didn't mean to go too deep there.
Okay, one more question, and then we'll see if there's any other questions. Are you a man of faith?
I am. How could you not be?
Well, that's what I'm asking. You're into all these other things, and you undoubtedly have rubbed elbows with people that would probably make fun of you if they found out that you were. How does faith fit into all?
Well, I've never been a person that cares about what other people think of me, but there's no way that you could live a life like mine and not be a man of faith. They say that faith is the essence of things unseen, right? Mm-hmm. Well, even if we approach this from a scientific standpoint, we must have faith, because you look at let's say, what are the things unseen? Well, what are the things seen? The human eye is only able to see a minute sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost a negligible slice. And so we have to have faith that these other things are out there, the higher frequencies, gamma rays, even you can't see microwaves, but we have faith that when we turn on our microwave, that it will cook our food. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is obviously a bit rigorous of a description, but I have faith that there is more than what meets the eye, and I wouldn't be here if there wasn't.
What we perceive is just such a tiny slice of what is actually going on there. One fellow theologian said that the reason that we're designed that way is that if we had a wider range of perception, we would go mad.
That has to be the case. There's actually this interesting book. I can't remember who the author was, but it's the title of the book is A Case Against Reality. And in it, he basically is talking about where that came from. Why do we see this little sliver and not a larger sliver or no sliver at all? Well, this phenomena is an evolutionary one, right? So the human being has developed into a certain bracket of perception that allows us to be furthered as the human race, right? So we basically are bred to see fitness and we see it as beauty, but all that is just, oh, hey, this thing is going to further the human race. And that is bred so deeply in our genetics that you don't know it to be that way. You think that you're making choices over here, but actually your genetics are making them for you.
That's a big matter of controversy today, whether perception is real or not, and whether you have the ability to even make a choice. So how about you all that are listening? I want to thank you for being here. Do you have a question or comment? We're going to have him back pretty soon, maybe next week.
Yeah, I'd like to know about what he sees when he's putting on those glasses that he didn't tell us about.
Okay. That's a very interesting phenomena, actually. If you've ever looked at any of these natural hallucination videos that use oscillatory visual frequencies to induce hallucinations, it's a bit like that, only it's special in that you're seeing them overlaid upon what you're looking at. So if I put them on and it operates between 1 and about 220 hertz. If I tune into about 110 hertz, maybe just below that, I'd have to plug it into my oscilloscope to know for sure. But first of all, it gives me a headache. But if I persist through it, I get these very primary color Lego block looking shapes that start drifting in from the periphery. And then it becomes a sort of mandalic geometric shape. So very symmetrical, very fractal-like geometry.
You can't see ghosts?
I have not seen any ghosts with these.
Anybody else? All right, then. So we'll say good night for the time being. And again, thank you for being here. And thank you, Jesse, very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Extremely interesting. I can't wait to get some more. Maybe we can get you on again next Sunday night. Amen?
I'd be happy to.
Amen. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Jack.
Nephew. You have been listening to Jackson Snyder Presents on Hebrew Nation Radio. The resilience and plasticity of the human brain is amazing. I thought years ago, these children grow up in a Chinese public school where English is not spoken, and they're under a communist rule, and perhaps some of these teachers or sons and daughters of teachers were a part of the Cultural Revolution when all intellectuals and teachers had to go to prison or be executed. And now the teachers being so indoctrinated into a political religious system, how could children survive that? And I remember when he went to college, he and his sister as well, I thought then, they're coming over here from Chinese schools, they're going right into American colleges. Now how resilient, how plastic is that? And then to go on through these other careers and be successful, and very successful, I'll be interested to know where he goes from here. Before the show, we talked a little bit, and what he's into now, I think he relayed a little bit at the end of the interview, is electronics, and taking the actual components and putting them together, and thus inventing new, unusual, and useful electronic components that do extraordinary things. Oh, I think, had my brothers and I, in our day, had the kinds of technological resources that those growing up for the last 20 years have had here, what could we have accomplished? Where would we be today? I know where we'd be, right where Elohim wanted us to be. We didn't get much into the matters of faith, but as you know, his parents are missionaries, been on the mission field for as long as I can remember, 40 years, maybe more. So that component of faith is going to play a great part in this in some way. And I've got to tell you, I have not communicated with him very much since he was probably 5 years old and we were playing with a roll of Indian head pennies in Pensacola, Florida. How times change. I'm sure you'll agree. So we're going to get him on here one more time. We're going to talk about faith. And again, I thank you for listening. Please subscribe to my podcast, Jackson Snyder Presents, or whatever it's called, wherever you find it. I work hard to bring you the unusual, the unspeakable at times, and the highly spiritual issue of our contemporary times. Thank you, Hebrew Nation Radio, for the opportunity now, for 5 years, 6 nights a week, to be doing what I have been enjoying so much. The only thing better, I think, would be to get paid for it.